as Rocket J. Squirrel would say. And now here's something I hope you'll really like. The 20th series of Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends, narrated by Mark Morgan in the UK and the US versions. So after going through some really bad seasons of the show, how is Series 20? It's definite proof that Andrew Brenner is the right person to handle Thomas the Tank Engine. Because it has interesting stories and entertaining stories, great new characters and great reintroductions to classic characters. The new characters include Hugo, a gentle rail zeppelin. He is a kind and gentle engine. He loves to be useful, but is also a bit sensitive. This is shown when his feelings are hurt by the other engines ostracizing him when out of fear that he would replace them, but they soon saw that they were wrong and apologized to him. And Hugo has quite an interesting design. It's like this engine that's propelled by a jet propeller. That's really interesting. I've never seen an engine that looks like this before this. And so far he's only had 2 episodes to himself, so I'm hoping that they develop his personality because he looks very interesting. There's Bradford, an officious and strict brakeman who adheres to every railway rule, no matter how minor the rule might be. Although he means well and does his best to keep the trucks in order, his overzealous attitude makes his trains commonly run very late. Because of this, the engines find him annoying. He is also quite conceited, as he claimed he knew how much the engines appreciated him. And this was the first time in a while we've seen a brakeman with a face in the show since the spiteful brakeman from Series 2. And he sort of puts me in mind of those old army generals that you see in like wartime films or wartime comedy shows. And I know I've said this a lot about a lot of the new characters, but I think it would be great to see him again because he's very entertaining. And this series had a lot more time devoted to some of the classic characters, including Duck, Oliver, Toad, Donald, Douglas, and Daisy the Diesel Railcar. It's obvious that the writers they got for these episodes in this series obviously loved some of the new old characters that they brought back and wanted to show that love in these episodes they wrote. And the episode Love Me Tender was a great way to introduce Donald and Douglas to the show. And the episode kind of reminds me of Twin Trouble from Series 6, where the two get in a little squat war with each other. And it's really nice to see them again after so many years. And this episode is also a callback to them being really good in the snow in The Deputation. They also brought back Daisy the Diesel Railcar, who was hinted to be a part of the show since Sodor's Legend of the Lost Treasure. And one interesting thing to note about this character is the fact that in Sodor's Legend of the Lost Treasure she was temporarily voiced by Teresa Gallagher, but for the rest of the series she was voiced by Tracy Ann Oberman, who a lot of people may remember from Doctor Who as Yvonne Hartman, the original founder of the Torchwood Institute. And her episodes just had so many great callbacks to the character she was when she was introduced in Series 2, being hard to please, vain, lazy, stubborn, afraid of cows and balls, and always using her fitter as an excuse to get out of work. This series has had one writer writing for all the Daisy-related episodes, and it shows that this guy really knows the character Daisy is. And Tracy Ann just does a terrific voice as her. I mean, when I first heard Tracy Ann as Daisy, I honestly didn't recognise her. It's like this posh upper-class voice that she gives. It's just so damn amazing.
Early mornings are bad for my swerves. I'll just have 10 minutes more. Oh.
And I'm really glad that she had more than just one episode in this series. I also love the episode The Rail Car and the Coaches, where she shows herself with Hanny and Clarabelle. And it shows that not everybody on Sodor gets along with each other. And as I said, it's a great way to bring Daisy back, and I really hope that they show more of her in the future. And speaking of comebacks, they also bring back Glyn the coffee pot engine from The Adventure Begins, who was repaired and now works at Ulster Castle with Stephen and Millie. They also bring back Judy and Jerome, the breakdown train from The Adventure Begins, and make them a permanent team on the railway where Ryan and Daisy work. It was really great to see these other characters after so long, and it really developed their personalities more. The series also brought in the small railway engines since Sodor's Legend of the Lost Treasure, Rex, Bert and Mike. And this was also the first time since Series 4 that a TV series stories were based off of stories from the Railway series. Holy crap, since they were brought in Sodor's Legend of the Lost Treasure, this was just amazing. We haven't had an episode based on the Railway series since Series 4, so this was a huge step up for this TV series. which is really great to see Railway series stories being put into the TV series for the first time since Series 4. Even though it would have been a little awesome to see them introduced in the model series, I have this theory about why they didn't introduce them in the model series. I've heard from many resources that the studio had a hard enough time working with the narrow gauge engine models, so it would have been impossible for them to have made miniature models of the small railway engines that worked in the same functions, and this was part of the reasons they upscaled the narrow gauge engines to larger models from Series 5 onwards. But because the show is CG now, anything's possible. With the small railway engines, a lot of people may prefer Woody Rushton's narrations of the stories since he did audio narrations of the stories. But I honestly like the voice actors they chose for the characters. They just seem really fitting to me. Mike is voiced by Tim Whitnall in this show, and you may have heard his voice in other children's shows including Rory the Racing Car, Fifi and the Flower Tots, Teletubbies, Treefoo Tom, Mr. Men and Underground Ernie. And he just has a great voice for Mike, sort of like this Irish type accent. Well, I think it's Irish, but correct me if I'm wrong.
If engines can't whistle properly, they shouldn't try. Whistles are very important. Engines without whistles aren't proper engines at all.
And the episodes that I like the most are Sydney Sins, because I find it funny how Sydney tries to make up a song to help him remember jobs. And this is just great development for a character who's very forgetful. Diesel and the Ducklings were kind of funny because it shows Diesel having a soft side when he sees a duck and some ducklings. And it introduces some hilarious duck stares that we see further on in the series. Seriously, what is it about ducks that's so scary in this series? Bradford the Brake Van was a great introduction to Bradford the Brake Van. All the Daisy episodes were just top notch in my opinion. Pouty James was another one of my favourite episodes because it shows James being really pouty about not getting to do the jobs that he wants to do. And the way the other engines try to help him forget about hating the jobs and trying to enjoy himself is just really hilarious and adorable. Letters to Santa is another great episode because it focuses on Percy and Harold the Helicopter's relationship. And I swear this cross-face that Percy makes is a callback to the face he made in the classic series. The Christmas Coffee Pot and Never the Hill are very interesting and entertaining episodes because it focuses on Glyn the Coffee Pot engine. Mucking About is quite a funny episode because it focuses on Monty and Max, two characters from the pack. And I don't really have a huge reason for this episode being one of my favourites, I just thought it was funny. Buckled Tracks and Bumpy Trucks was another entertaining episode because it's just so hilarious to see the Fat Controller trying to get rid of his sun hat unsuccessfully. But my three most favourite episodes of this series are Tit for Tat, Mike's Whistle and Useful Railway, because it focuses on the small railway engines and they're the first 3 episodes to be based on a railway series story for the first time since Series 4. And with Tit for Tat, I thought it was great that they actually brought in the fat and thin clergymen, who were actually Wilbert Awdry and another guy that Wilbert used to know. And some would say that these episodes are giving Thomas too much screen time since he wasn't exactly in the stories and the books, but I honestly don't mind that they put Thomas in these episodes. Plus, it was a great way to actually get Thomas to be in a scene with Wilbert Awdry himself. That Andrew Brenner is one clever guy. I've always found Mike's Whistle really funny because it's great to focus on Mike. And Useful Railway was a great wrap-up for this series because it was just a great story to base off of the Railway series. And some people may complain that it didn't use the Ballast story from the book. But I personally don't mind that because they sort of did references to it in Sodor Sudra of the Lost Treasure with the way they introduced the 3 railway engines. And I bet you all are expecting me to complain about Rosie not getting any screen time in this series. But no, not even going to bother. It's not worth it. Yeah, seriously, I'm not even going to bother. Since she obviously returned in Series 21, there's no point in me bothering to complain about it. So I'm not going to do it. I know I keep saying this about every series that's come out since Andrew Brenner's been writing them, but each series is just getting better and better every year. So Series 20 of Thomas and Friends is definite proof that Andrew Brenner is the right person to handle the show. It's got entertaining stories, great new characters, many welcomed returns, and the CG is just top notch as always since Andrew Brenner took over.